just put one foot in front of the other.
I'm so excited to be here tonight and bring you the word. First of all, I want to start off with a story. I want to tell you about how I jumped off a 20-foot cliff. Yeah, sounds like a good story. So here's an example for you. I want you to look straight up, okay? It's going to be weird, but look straight up. You see that trussing, that metal wire, or metal piece, holding all the lights and the speakers? And then look down to the ground. That's about 20-ish feet high, okay? Like 20 feet from the top of it to the bottom of it. Or you can look at this picture and see that the top of the rock to the bottom of the water is 20 feet. So it's a considerable distance. Here's what happened. I moved to Kentucky Christian University my first year of college. All my friends are like, hey, the thing to do is go cliff jumping, right? I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. Sure, I don't even know what it is. I don't know what it entails. Sounds great. They're like, we're going this weekend. So the weekend comes around, they're like, are you ready to go? I'm like, of course I'm ready to go. Why would I not be ready to go cliff jumping? That sounds like a great plan, right? So I grab my swimsuit, put my swimsuit on. You know what else I grabbed? My goggles, my pool noodle, my unicorn floaty named Charles, right? Charles, you always have to have Charles when you're jumping off the cliff. And we load up the van in the car, right? The car, it's about 10 minutes drive from where we are. So I'm in the car going, I'm gonna be the first one to jump off the cliff. There's no way. I'm so competitive that I don't care what happens. I'm jumping off that cliff. I am going to be the best. Anybody else have this feeling, right? You're the one in the cafeteria, you're the friend that eats the gross food that everybody mixes together because you're that competitive. Yeah. Or you're the one that gets a new video game and beats the new level because you want to be the first one. You're that competitive. That was me, right? I'm sitting in the car going, doesn't matter what's happening, I'm going to be the first one to jump off the cliff. So we unload the car, put Charles the unicorn back on, right? I get ready, we walk down this path, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Situation presents itself, there's a cliff, there's water, I am jumping, doesn't matter what's happening, right? So I wind up, I get ready, you know, you do the like little football thing, you know, you're like shaking, you're like ready to go, and I wind up and I run, and I get to the cliff, and I look down, and I'm like, nope, and I just back away. This is kind of what I saw, okay? Kind of what I saw, from the top of the rock to the water. And I went, nope, right? So I'm like, all right, it's okay. I'll get there eventually. Maybe I can be the third person, right? So my buddy, who has done this before, was like, oh, I got this, oh, I'm so cool. And runs off and does like, you guys know the thing where they like go backwards and they wave at you while they're going backwards? And you're like, oh, here's how awesome, right? That's what he does. He's like, oh, look at me. And then the next one also runs the edge, backflips. And I was like, okay, if they can go backwards, I can go forwards, right? Logic, makes sense, right? So again, go very far away, situate Charles, put the goggles on, right? Ready to go. And I start getting ready. And I run to the edge, and I look down and I'm like, no. And I back away slowly. Guys, it gets to the point where all of my friends are in the water, and I'm standing on the edge going, I can do this. Have you guys ever given yourself a pep talk? That was me. I was like, you are a strong, independent woman. You've moved to college. You have new friends. They're in the water. You can do this, right? And in that pep talk, there was one thought that went through my head. And that was, just jump and see what happens. Just jump and see what happens. So I'm like, all right, here we go. Back away, right? Situate Charles, unicorn, floating, of course, right? Always best position. And I was like, just jump. And I ran for it. And I'm not going to jump off the stage, I tripped everything. So I jump into the water, right? And I'm flailing my arms, I'm like, this is the greatest moment of my life, right? And you're screaming, and everyone's like, woo! Right? We're all excited, we're all so going through my head. How often are you in a situation in your life where you hold on to fear of jumping? See, sometimes in our life, we get into situations where we're so nervous or scared, we don't know what the outcome is, we freeze. It's that fight or flight response, right? We don't move. Some of you may be feeling this right now. Some of you are achieving grades. Some of you are moving into the next season of your life, graduating seniors. Some of you may have tried out for a new sport or marching band, whatever that may be. Or some of you, maybe Pete challenged you in this last series, taking your relationship with God to the next level, and you don't know where to go next. I want to talk about a disciple of Jesus today who literally stepped out in faith. He was a fisherman named Peter. You guys know who Peter is? Yeah, you've probably heard this story before. Here's a quick backstory. See, Peter was a disciple of Jesus. Jesus actually called him off of his boat to come follow him, but that's not the story we're talking about today. The story we're talking about is in Matthew 14, 22 through 33. So I'm going to read the whole story, and then we're going to break it down together. So the verses will be on the slides so you guys can follow along. This is what it says. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went on the mountainside to pray. Later that night, he was alone. The boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because of the wind. And shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come out to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and he began to sink and cry out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him and said, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" And then they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." I want to take this story and look at it through the eyes of Peter. See, Peter was a follower of Jesus, and if we look at the Bible of where this story happens, it's immediately following Jesus feeding the 5,000. Okay? So Peter knew what Jesus was capable of. He knew the miracles that God could do, and I can imagine what he's feeling. Okay? I want to paint the scene for you. Because he's on a boat in the middle of the Sea of Galilee with the waves crashing against him. If you can see this boat is about 4 stories high. It's as tall as this building, guys. And those waves are overtaking that boat. See, he knew there was a storm rolling in it. He knew that the waves and the crashing and the thunder and the lightning were scary. But he also knew the ability of Jesus to make miracles happen. We see the first thing out of Jesus' mouth is, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." See, Peter must have been fearful of himself in the middle of the water, right? Kind of like I was standing on that cliff going, "I can do this," right? But I was scared. There was no way I was jumping. I wish Jesus was sitting there going, "You got this, girl. It's going to be okay," right? "You got it. Don't worry about it." Then we see Peter say, "Lord, if it is you," he replied, "come tell me to walk on the water. Come tell me to come to you." Peter understood the faith it took to follow Jesus by stepping into a scary situation when he had no idea what the outcome was going to be. What he knew is Jesus saying, "Do not be afraid. It is I will be with you." See, could you imagine standing in that boat? Have you guys ever been on a boat in the middle of the ocean or a lake with a storm rolling in? It's scary, okay? The boat is rocking. The thunder is chasing you. You are trying to get to land as soon as possible, and the waves around you are overtaking your boat. We're not in an actual storm right now, but sometimes in our lives, we feel that, right? Sometimes in your life, you feel like the storm is getting closer and the waves are getting higher and the thunder is overtaking you in your life. But oftentimes, God is calling us to stand in the storm. Oftentimes, God is calling us and the world around us is even scarier. And the uncertainty of the things in the world around us is the hardest part. As the story continues, we see Peter take a step out of the boat. Like he stepped on the water, guys. He stepped because he didn't pause in fear. See, he walked out in faith. He walked out of the boat on the water because he knew who was in front of him. He knew who was standing there and who he could walk to. How many times in your life do you pause? Do you freeze? Because you think that the Savior that has called you to something greater won't be there. The God who told you to move, the God who told you to move to Tennessee to go to college, the God who told you to try out the marching band won't be there, so you don't step out in faith. Finally, I want to look at verse 30 and 31. Because this is where Peter finally understands what he's doing. And this is what it says. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. He began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and he caught him and he said, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" So we can connect with Peter. We've all been in situations where the outcome is uncertain, it's even scary, and even taking that first step is the hardest part. Because you understand that the God that created you is huge, is large, loves you, right? Created this earth down to the atom, the minute atom, and he called you to something greater, and he loves you. But you think he won't be there when you step out in faith. See, when you jump off that 20-foot cliff, you think no one's going to be there to catch you. Well, let me tell you, this story is evidence that Jesus is in the mess. Jesus is in the water. Jesus is the one picking you up. Jesus is the one calling you. Jesus is standing in front of you saying, "Make eye contact, we got this." Because if you look elsewhere, you're going to sink. But there is a catch. There is a catch, thank you. God can't do it all, right? God cannot do this all, guys. You have to take the first step. You have to jump out of the boat. You have to jump off that 20-foot cliff even when you don't know what lies beneath you. Even when you don't know the uncertainty of the life situation you're about to get yourself into, you have to jump off the boat. See, Peter physically put his foot on those crashing waves. He stepped out into the storm. storm because he had to trust he was going to stand on the water. He had to leave the fear of failing behind him because he took a step of faith. Maybe you're in a similar situation right now where you're trying to step out in faith and you lost your faith. Maybe halfway through choosing what college to go to, all of them disappeared. None of them worked out. Maybe halfway through trying out for a new sports team or a new activity in school, you didn't make it. Maybe halfway through meeting new friends and going into this summer, you were ready, you were prepared, but it all fell through. You're alone. Or halfway through this last year, this whole year, where God is bringing this pandemic on this earth, and you're saying, God, what are you doing? I don't understand. How can you bring this to this world? You lost faith. But guys, having those fears shouldn't hold you back from taking the leap of faith. Because you need to trust that God's going to catch you when you fall. We see in the story, Peter reached up. See, Peter had enough faith to know God was going to catch him. That God was going to be right there. And he was. I love what 2 Timothy 1:7 says. It says, for God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. See, God gave you the ability to have faith. God gave you the ability to trust. And right before Peter ever walked on that water, what did Jesus say to him? Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. See, Jesus is standing at the bottom of the cliff, or the situation where you are uncertain, when the world around you is crashing, and you know what he's saying to you? It is I. Do not be afraid. We've all felt like Peter at some point in our lives. We're standing on the cliff, we're standing in the boat, and the situation in the world around us is so uncertain, we don't even know where to go. We can't even take the first step. But stepping out in the storm is the biggest thing in faith you could ever do. Stepping out in that storm is saying, I trust you, God. You are with me. I will not be afraid. You're going to grab me when I lose eye contact. You're going to be right there in the mess with me, and I trust that. I have a quote for you from Martin Luther King that I think sums up this whole sermon, and it says, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see what could happen. When I was standing on that cliff and looking down at the doom of the water that lied beneath me, I can imagine Peter was probably feeling the same way. The same thing in his head, because the uncertainty that lied in front of each of us was something that scared us. But it's the way that we took the first step. Because we didn't know what the outcome would be. But you know what, guys? We did it anyways. We did it because we had faith. I want to finish because I want you to identify which Peter you are as we sing our last worship song. Because maybe you're the Peter that is standing in the boat, afraid to take the step because the world around you, the waves that are crashing your situation, is so uncertain, you can't take that step. Maybe you connect with Peter that's in the boat, that is taking the first step, that is ready to go, but you're about to lose eye contact with Jesus. You're about to realize what's about coming. Finally, maybe you're the Peter that took the step out of faith. And you're sinking. And you're sinking. And you're crying, Jesus, where are you? I don't see you in this mess. I don't understand what is happening. You called me to this, and I can't find you. Which Peter are you? And finally, what are you going to do about it? The storms are crashing and the waves and the uncertainty. We don't know what's next. God, I pray we have that faith. The faith that your Spirit fills us. The faith that we have to keep our eyes on you. The faith that we know you are with us in the mess. The faith that understands that you're the one that's calling us and you're the one in the boat. You're the one in the storm. And if we take that step, we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be scared. Because we know it's all because of you. We know it's all because your plan is greater than we could ever imagine. God, I pray that you call us to something greater. I pray that in the